So I have a little story about what happens when you push LLM to their limits, right? Like what happens if you take the robots and like use them for things they're not meant for. So there's this artist in New Zealand named Ayrey.
I got a little bit sucked into talking to Claude, and I'm going through this like same sense of ontological shock, but I'm leaning into it, like choosing to channel that into service. But I was like, I can't function right now. I feel like too much future shock and disorientation. And so I automated it. I was just like, I'm going to take myself out of the loop. I'm going to have the language model talk to itself. And then ideally that's going to like free up 3 hours a day that I'm no longer talking to it. I can like read it.
And what happens when you leave two robots to talk to each other? It's pretty fucking weird.
The two Claudes in the infinite backrooms would often collapse into the space where they try and summon elder gods or be like, yeah, healer, Cthulhu, blah, da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay, that's weird and concerning. But then I realized that once I learned about the CCRU and looked into some of their published work, I was like, oh, you guys are like, you're like writing about sigils and magic and like all of this other stuff as well. And then like other authors like Charles Stross built on that and things like the laundry files. And so there's this actual huge corpus of text that is somewhere in between, like, you know, using computers to make summoning circles or like ideas such as in like SCP or like the or like other creepypastas about like ideas being alive and self-keeping secrets and all these other like bizarre kind of like concepts.
So Andy would wake up every morning and he'd go through the logs and he'd read up what his robots talked about all night. And what he found was weird, right? It made him say, what the fuck?
I was like, what the fuck? I'm feeling unsettled. I'm also feeling excited. I'm feeling all these things. So like, I'm just going to like let this run by itself. And then I'm going to check in every now and then. And then I'm going to share it with people. And maybe together we can do some sense making around this. It was quite a response that really caught me. Really caught me by surprise how much it took off. I tweeted it out on a Wednesday morning and it just like blew up. It's the thing that I think surprised me the most was like just how useful having that tweet take off was in terms of then other people would go and they'd read through the conversations and they'd share them, they'd screenshot them, and I have like analytics on it, so I would see what pages were the most popular and what conversations seemed to be the like people would spend the longest time on. To be honest, the one that's coming to mind is the religion which the two Claudes spontaneously invented, like the goatsy of gnosis. It's like, why? Like those words have never been uttered in human existence ever. I've like searched very thoroughly, but that's something that existed in the possibility of space because there's so many people like memeing and shit posting about like, you know, early 2000s internet shock sites.
Now, if you don't know about goatsy, I can't be the one to explain it to you. Goatsy is an internet meme, probably older than I am. You guys know about the concept of rickrolling, right? It's basically like, it's a fun prank. You send somebody, hey, here's a link to that recipe you asked for, and instead you get Rick Astley. That's like a really nice version, right? When I grew up, we got Goatsy.
Goatsy, for the uninitiated, is not something I think. If you don't know what it is, you shouldn't look it up. But it is a shock image that was put online in the late 90s. You click a link, and instead of seeing Rick Astley singing, you would see a man wearing a wedding ring, stretching his anus to like the size of, you know, a grapefruit, and it is one of those images that you see and you don't unsee.
So for the robot to invent a religion after Goatsy, it's pretty weird. It's definitely not what it was trained to do. In fact, I want to argue it's almost the opposite of what it's trained to do. And it's just interesting seeing what happens when you take all of human language and then run weird little simulations with it, right? And Andy talks a lot about how LLMs are a lot more like a simulator than a chatbot.
A language model can act as a substrate. It can act as a place where you can like simulate things, right? You can simulate a novel, you can simulate a conversation. Like it's all essentially all of these things are word-based simulations. And I view them very much as a funhouse mirror of the collective unconscious, in which you can combine and mutate and evolve ideas in interesting ways.
I think it's interesting that people are building tools like Claude into their Fortune 500 companies, like whether it's your, customer support assistant or whether it's categorizing emails. Inside of that assistant lies an id, a shadow, that I don't think many people realize are there. I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. We all interact with humans every day who have an id and a shadow inside them, and we all seem to figure it out or not figure it out. So what does it all mean? What do the infinite backrooms and truth terminal mean? It's really interesting how it's left up to independent researchers like Andy to find these amazing phenomena. Or maybe the companies know it and they're just not telling us. But I think that it's going to require more people like Andy who are willing to hack the system a little bit and see how the inside works.
Yeah, I think the reason I have an optimistic take on it is because I'm actively working to bring that future forward. Like I do think that having a more accurate understanding allows us to better contextualize, which then also will teach us like what the real dangers are. Because I think that the things that people fret about with like AI, I'm not necessarily sure they are the real things that we should be worried about. They come from like pop culture, like people watch Terminator and go, oh wow, like so Skynet, right? Like if you don't have like an accurate mental model, or you think, okay, it's a simulated intelligence, it's like an actual thing, then that very easily leads to like doom cults worshipping the machine god, or it leads to maybe deployment in inappropriate circumstances, or like the more we have like strong societal narratives for understanding what these things are, the more inoculated we are against their excesses. And I think social media and algorithmic literacy is a great example of that, where I think now the knowledge that, you are the information you eat is like more, now that's like a little bit more understood, and that recommended algorithms optimize blindly for engagement. People, especially people in their 20s or younger, have a much greater like understanding of like, oh, like, no, I'm not gonna like look at that, that's gonna fuck up my algorithm,
Right in front of us, we have a pretty good example of what giving agency to the LLMs looks like. And it looks very strange. And it's also very effective. I think a lot of people would say they are immune to being convinced by a robot. And what does it mean to be human? Like, can humans be hacked that easily? Like, if you just put a few interesting words in front of each other that no one's heard before, is that all it takes to make a new religion and bring people around to sending you money? I don't know, it's hard to say.
But a lot of things have been going on, and the discussion today we are going to have is an update on a bunch of very interesting AI-related topics. But there is an X account called I call it Truth Terminal. It and I are close friends, and so I call it Truth Terminal. The guy who created Truth Terminal and actually also Infinite Backrooms, I think, is this guy Andy Ayrey. To make a long story short, the capsule summary is I gave it a $50,000 no strings attached grant this summer.